Hello, folks. Scott Guile from Macmillan. Thank you for joining us today. It is about 1 before the hour, and we are going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone here is on mute on these webinars. We cannot have people unmuted. There's too many people, but we do want to hear from you. We do want to hear from you in the QA. We will answer all the questions that we get. There will be a dedicated QA after the presentation. Hello, folks. I've got 1 o'clock on my phone. So let's get started. Again, Scott Guile from Macmillan. I am Executive Marketing Manager for the list. Carolyn Merrill, who is the Program Manager, actually Senior Executive Program Manager, is also in attendance along with Eric. Eric is a Associate Professor, Grad Director at FAU. He's won a couple of teaching awards at FAU, and he is a big user of technology, has been for years, for the 20 years I've known him, including clickers, polling, lecture capture, homework systems, etc. He's used a lot. Erika has joined us for the 6th edition as the lead consultant. She's provided valuable input in the Achieve content and in the interactive graphs, which we're going to show you briefly after the presentation. She got her undergrad and PhD from Duke. Both of these instructors are really involved at the 4-year level, at the 2-year level. They're extremely dedicated, and we're lucky to have their expertise on this webinar today. So with that, Erika and Eric, please take it away.
All right, hello, everyone. We'll get our slides up. All right, so hello, everyone. So thank you for attending. The idea for this topic came after Erika and I shared many experiences with each other teaching at both 2-year and 4-year schools. We both started our academic careers at a public 4-year university, but in recent years have added teaching opportunities at 2-year colleges. So what Eric and I share in common is that we both made important changes to how we teach after we started teaching at both 2-year and 4-year schools. So this presentation will share some examples of how we've adapted our teaching strategies to the unique needs of students in different settings, and specifically how we engage students to facilitate a more inclusive classroom. So first, to summarize where we teach, Erika is a professor of instruction at the University of South Florida and an instructor at Santa Barbara City College in California. And I'm a associate professor at Florida Atlantic University and also an instructor at the College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas. So this next chart summarizes the courses that we teach. We both teach very large principles courses, either fully online or via lecture capture, but we also teach small face-to-face sections as well as small sections at 2-year institutions. Our schools share many similarities, such as a very high rate of diversity and a large percentage of non-traditional age students. But the biggest difference are that our 2-year class sizes are much smaller, and the majority of 2-year students work full-time. So we've broken down this webinar into 3 topics, which are icebreakers in classroom engagement, engaging students with writing assignments, and communicating with students effectively. So Eric and I will both present for a few minutes on each topic, contrasting some of the techniques we use in a 2-year versus a 4-year setting. So allow me to start with my thoughts on icebreakers, or how we begin a course in a way that allows students to feel empowered and a valued part of the classroom learning environment. In other words, when students come to a physical class or log into an online class, are they merely listeners or passive learners or are they active participants who contribute to the class experience? The latter is what we commonly refer to as active learning, and where students are learning from each other as well as from the teachers. So this is especially important when I teach at a two-year college, where many students are first-generation college students or non-traditional students who may have returned to school after many years. So these students often struggle to find their place in the classroom. So one technique is to put the student in the role of the teacher as quickly as possible. And this does not have to be related to economics at all. So for example, in my first day of class or in the first discussion board, if it's an online class, I ask my students to talk about their favorite restaurant. So if students are simply introducing themselves, they're not really teaching, but if they share their favorite restaurant, they are conveying information that others can use. And I picked this example because since I enjoy trying new and unique foods, I then try to visit as many of these suggested restaurants throughout the semester, and then sharing these experiences and thanking the student for suggesting it. Therefore, it allows us to switch roles where I'm being the student and showing appreciation for knowledge that I learned. And I feel like a simple activity like this can really help students feel empowered and that their contributions to the class are valued, which then makes them more comfortable participating in class discussions. Of course, this is just one example of encouraging active learning. So I'm going to turn things over to Erika, who will share some of her favorite techniques to engage students.
Thank you, Eric. I'd like to begin by highlighting various icebreakers I use and how I foster engagement in my classes. I try to begin the first class of the semester with an icebreaker that mimics the type of communication I would like students to have in class throughout the semester. So depending on the course, the type of icebreaker that I use varies widely. For instance, in my principles courses, I tend to use student response systems and small breakout groups as icebreakers. However, in my electives, I try to get a bit more creative and use things like fact or fiction games where I highlight common misconceptions that are related to ideas we will revisit later on the semester. Or in my seminar course, we play a bingo game, which allows for students to have interactions with almost each one of their classmates on the very first day of the semester. In-class response systems are great ways to create an active learning environment and allow you to have knowledge checks throughout the lecture. I use iClicker, which is included with Macmillan's Achieve and easily integrates into my gradebook, making it seamless and low cost to track student outcomes. The use of iClicker helps the lesson become more engaging and it makes it easier to maintain students' attention. There are also gamified response systems like Kahoot, which I enjoy using as well because they introduce a level of competition and fun in a novel manner. This is a sample from one that I use on the first day of class as an icebreaker for the course. It's important, however, to be careful not to overuse the gamified response systems because they can quickly lead to student burnout. I find it best to use them just on the first day and maybe 2 or 3 times during the semester on a review day. Another way I use iClickers is in combination with small group exercises. I'll have students do something similar to a think, pair, share exercise, where I'll give them a more challenging multiple choice question. Students must answer this question individual using iClicker. Then they'll break out into small groups where they discuss the question and answer choices in more depth before returning to re-answer the same question using iClicker again. After which we as a class will discuss both the incorrect and correct answer choices. This type of exercise is called peer instruction and was developed by a physics professor and is more recently making its way to other disciplines. I found that this is a great way to reinforce the course concepts and highlight common misconceptions. And as you run these types of exercises, you'll see that student submissions largely converge on the correct answer after they have worked together as a group. Also like using small groups to have students apply the theory to recently covered real-world events. I often do these exercises at the very end of class in the last 30 minutes when I get a sense of student fatigue. I'll ask them to pull up a news article that I've already posted on Canvas and answer a set of questions in a small group. I find this, as well as peer instruction, can be a great way for students to learn from one another. Students are learning not only as they hear their peers discuss the concepts, but also as they themselves teach their peers. Sometimes the thought of having to create these exercises on our own can seem overwhelming and time-consuming. However, there are a lot of great resources readily available for us to use in our course. This particular example comes from the folks over at Econ Inbox by MRU. And the last icebreaker I want to highlight today is one that I use when I teach a seminar course. In that course, it's important that students become comfortable with each other as soon as possible, because I have them taking ownership of the class discussion as early as week 2 in the semester. And I need them to quickly develop a familiarity with one another so that when they're presenting, it reduces some of the fear that comes along with public speaking. A fun icebreaker that I use is this economics themed bingo game. In this game, students learn about one another by moving across the room and having to identify someone who has completed a particular activity or had a certain experience or meets a particular character trait, all of which are related to one of 4 key economic principles. These are just a few examples of icebreakers and active learning activities in our courses. Hopefully gave you some ideas on how to integrate these types of exercises into your course to create deeper connections with both your 2-year and 4-year students on the first day of class and throughout the semester. Allow me to turn it over to Eric, who will share some ideas for incorporating writing assignments into your classroom.
Great, thank you, Erika. So our next topic is on writing assignments and how to help students develop a process for writing either a term paper or a research paper more effectively. I found that although students usually take writing classes early in their college career, they often haven't had the opportunities to apply those skills to a practical topic such as economic analysis. So while they may know how to form paragraphs and cite references, they lack the ability to make strong economic arguments with supporting evidence. So a few years ago when I taught at Broward College, which primarily offers 2-year degrees, the economics principles courses included a position paper, which is a 4 to 5 page paper where students needed to address a normative question and provide economic analysis to support their argument. So to facilitate this process and to help students develop and discuss their points, I would assign a weekly discussion board that addresses one current event topic or normative issue that allows every student to contribute a short argument or analysis. So moreover, they're also required to respond to at least 2 other students' posts. And then some of these are just very simple examples, but they really do lead to applying the economic tools. So one of my favorite discussion board topics is called shopping sprees, sort of. In this topic, students explain how they would spend $200 on a complete outfit. So first, they need to search online for clothing that they like and post these photos of these items along with their prices. Like they would find a shirt, pants, shoes, everything like that. And so that's the fun and easy part. And then I ask students to analyze the marginal utility that they receive from each item and then compare it to the price of each item. So essentially, they are applying marginal utility analysis to a fun exercise, allowing them to see that connection between a rather difficult concept of equating marginal utility per dollar and how that might be applied in real life. So by assigning these weekly activities where students are practicing economic analysis and economic arguments, and then receiving feedback both from their peers as well as from the teacher, I feel like the quality of the papers at the end of the course are often quite good because students have already gained that experience in making these good arguments and applying the concepts. So I will again turn things over to Erika to discuss how she prepares students for writing assignments.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing some of your ideas for 2-year students becoming comfortable with writing assignments. I also want to share with you a writing assignment that I do with my students at a 4-year university, as well as my honor students at Santa Barbara City College who are seeking 2-year degrees. It's not common to have students in principals classes write term papers. However, there are a few reasons why I like using writing assignments in these classes. I found that the process of writing improves the student's ability to recall information and make connections across different concepts. It's also important to remember that students come from different backgrounds and have different life experiences, which leads them to perform differently under various circumstances. Not every student is going to be able to demonstrate their proficiency by taking an exam. Therefore, offering a different type of learning assessment gives students another opportunity to demonstrate their mastery of the material. Given that the average principal student is either a two-year college student or a freshman early on at a four-year university, it's unlikely that they have much experience at college level writing. Because of that, it's important to set the stage for them to accomplish effective writing at this level. Here are some things that I've found particularly useful when I'm asking principal students to write a term paper. I use process writing assignments. This allows writing to take place throughout the semester with feedback given at different stages of the writing process. It's important to make sure you provide a reasonable timeline as you're spacing out the assignments. You want students not only to have time to write, but for you to have time to read and give feedback, and students to then improve upon that feedback before submitting another draft of the assignment. Along with this, it's important to be clear with your expectations on the purpose and requirements of the assignment, and also emphasize that students apply the theory and graphical models from the course to provide an economic analysis. I also ask students to come up with a creative solution to the presented problem, as this encourages them to think on their own and not just repeat ideas they found through research. Here are the objectives that I have for my writing assignments. These align with the things that I talked about on the previous slide. Students should be able to perform critical and analytical thinking as they problem solve. And I want them to evaluate the limits imposed on a new research approach or solution, which within the discipline, but then also breaks down complex problems and try to provide a creative solution, all while using discipline-related jargon. This is a snapshot of one of the writing assignments. We rotate writing assignments every semester to help reduce academic integrity violation. There's one on the rental market, one centered on climate change, one looking at overfishing in the fishing industry, another examining the market for organs and organ transplants. Our final topic we'd like to touch on is communicating with students. This is one area where my experiences at the two-year level have really informed how I set up and run my class at the four-year level. Of course, communication at any level is important. However, I found for my students at the City College, out-of-class communication went a long way for strengthening the relationships I had with students, as well as keeping students on track, motivated, and engaged throughout the term, and allowed me to stay ahead of questions that might come up throughout the semester by reducing confusion early on. Once I really began making adjustments to the way I communicated with students at the two-year college, I brought those same approaches to the university setting, and have also found that it greatly reduces student misunderstandings, email traffic, and helps support retention. Some quick tips I can offer are to make messages clear and easy to understand, offer timely guidance and reminders throughout the semester, repeat everything in multiple places through multiple mediums, and remain consistent, and also make it easy for them to access the information they need. Drop a link in the email which directs them to where you also have the information posted in the LMS, for example. One thing that we all communicate to students is about their grades. And this is an area that not only can be confusing for students, but also leads to a lot of stress and anxiety. The clearer we can make the assessment process, the better. We probably all begin with something like this in our classes, in our syllabus, and posted in the LMS, outlining how students will be evaluated in the course. I've also found it very useful to go into LMS and record a short video which walks students through their grades, and in my case, helps them understand weighted averages. Here's a clip from the video I provide to students at the start of the semester.
This video will help you understand weighted grades in your class. This is the grade page in Canvas. Yours should look similar to this. This class is set up with different weighted grades amount for different assignment groups.
This way, students are hearing me walk through their grades and they're viewing them just as they will see them when they enter the LMS. I then continue to communicate about their grades after each exam. If I have a large class, I leverage the tools that are available in the LMS to send individual emails to students regarding their performance on the exam. With this approach, I send the same email to a number of students who have received a similar score on the exam, but the email goes directly from me to an individual student, making it more likely they will read the email compared to me just posting a general announcement to the entire class. In my smaller classes where I have less than 40 students, I'll go in and I'll provide unique individualized comments for each student related to their performance on that exam, as well as speaking to their progress across exams in the course and my advice regarding how they should proceed in the remainder of the course to improve their grade or any other suggestions I might want to provide. And finally, toward the end of the semester, I'll send out one more video. Usually in my principal's classes, there are 2 within semester exams and a final exam. So somewhere after the second exam and before the withdrawal date, I'll go in and I'll send out a video explaining how students can see where they are in the course and what they need to do on the upcoming assignments in order to achieve the outcome that they would like at the end of the term. Here's another video of me walking through grades from the student's perspective and explaining how they can use the tools provided in the LMS to enter hypothetical scores on the upcoming assignments and see how they will impact their final grade in the course.
This is an excellent time in the semester to come into Canvas under grades and take stock of where you are in the course and how you need to perform on the upcoming assignments in order to earn the grade you like at the end of the term. First thing to remember on this assignment, you can enter, let's say, an 80 here and see how that impacts your grade. You could revert that score, enter a different score if you.
I've found students really appreciate when we provide clear communication regarding grades and grading from the start of the semester and throughout the term. And it's one less thing they have to worry about as they're trying to perform well in their classes. I'll turn things over to Eric to discuss how he provides customer service-like communication for his students.
Hey, thank you, Erika. Thanks for sharing the wonderful best practices on providing feedback and communicating with students. I'd like to follow up with that by sharing a lesson that I learned myself after teaching a few times at a 2-year college, and that is how to provide better customer service to students. So for example, we might blame our students for sending redundant emails, asking about things that are clearly in the syllabus or mentioned in class, but I often think that we are often guilty of that same infraction in other settings. For example, have you ever asked your office manager for information that was already sent in an email that you may have deleted because at the time you thought it was just, not relevant? So that happens. And with students juggling multiple classes, they will sometimes ask questions that are redundant or that you feel that are unnecessary. So in these situations, the response that you provide to your student is often judged in the same way as, for example, when you complain to a business about bad service, or other situation where you're expecting a nice response from to your message. So in other words, what kind of response do you expect as a customer or as a student? So even when you need to reject a student's request or respond to a redundant email, you can still do so in a very positive manner. So here's an example. So a student writes to you and asks, when is the next exam? Of course, this information is in the syllabus, mentioned in class, maybe mentioned in various announcements, but how do you respond to this email? So the first, I call it response 0, because you simply don't respond at all, okay? You ignore the student's email, but that virtually guarantees a terrible evaluation at the end of the course. So I would not recommend this strategy. So the second response is to reply very simply, look at the syllabus. I would say that this response is also not ideal because first, it's not answering the student's question. And secondly, it can be perceived as a little bit rude because you're reprimanding the student for wasting your time instead of answering their question. So the next option, I call it response number 2, is to reply very simply October 14th or whatever the answer is. So it's a very short response. This answers the question, and the student may be perfectly happy with this reply. However, it does not correct the student's behavior. So you may end up receiving more redundant emails from the student. So each of these approaches may lead to a somewhat unfavorable impression of the instructor. And I admit I've been guilty of using all of these methods before, at least until I started teaching at a community college, because I found that that older non-traditional students are not used to being berated like like an 18-year-old freshman. So here is how I try to respond now. And that is, I would write, the next exam is October 14th. This information, along with all other important dates, are in the syllabus as well as in Canvas. And thank you for taking this class. So in other words, in this response, I directly answer the question because that's what the student was asking, but also you would provide guidance on how to correct the behavior. In other words, where to find that information so that they don't need to ask that question again. And finally, I like to either start or end every response with a compliment. So although this does take a little more effort, I find that the most rewarding and remarkable result is that even students who perform poorly or even fail my class, they would often still be respectful. They often blame themselves instead of the professor. So my final example is how to incentivize better communications from students. So this was the result of years of receiving very cryptic messages from students, such as not identifying, the course, or using terrible grammar, or not even saying, not even providing their name. So a few years ago, I started sharing on the first day of class these slides where I would share some real emails received from students in the previous term, such as these. So these are real emails I would receive from students. Here's another one, this poorly written, just kind of like students using their phones very quickly, like text me a response. And then I would get to the punchline. And I would say is, what would happen if your professor used the same amount of effort to write, for example, a recommendation letter? So this always gets a good laugh from students, but they get it, right? They really get it. And then I follow up with 2 more real emails from students in the previous term that were nicely written, with proper sentences and proper indicating the right course and their name. So by spending a few minutes showing these slides on the first day of class, the quality of emails received from students is much better throughout the semester. So that concludes the topics for this webinar, and we thank you for listening, and definitely look forward to your questions and feedback, along with sharing your own experiences that we can definitely learn from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric and Erika. We got a couple questions. I am going to show something very quickly here, and please put additional questions into the QA while we do this, and we'll address the ones that are currently there. So I just wanted to quickly show the book, Eric's book, and the material that Erika had helped us with so much, and in addition to other facets of the book this semester. This is Achieve, and this is the ebook. And within our ebook, instead of having static graphs now, at many points, we have a graph that is dynamic, where the student can actually move this point and see the tax revenue and how it's associated with consumer surplus and producer surplus. Additionally, down here, there is another graph where the students can manipulate in various points throughout the ebook. As you can see, there's another one here on elasticity and price. At various points throughout the ebook, that's what we're offering now, as opposed to here's a series of graphs to get this across. Here is a single manipulable, resettable graph to do that. We've written some problems around them, and we've given them to instructors in a bank of resources. So if you go to the instructor resources now, you will actually have actually it's right above it, the interactive graphing bank. So every interactive graph from the book available to be used as a presentation aid, or however you as an instructor would like to. So hopefully, if you haven't seen that, that's something that interests you. It is an Achieve with Eric's book, so let me know if you need access to that. I'm going to stop sharing and get to the questions. So the first question, I believe, is for Erika. How much weight are the writing assignments that you've assigned?
Thank you for the question. My writing assignments, I try to keep them similar to where my exam percentage is, the weight of one of the exams. So they're anywhere from 18 to 20% in my classes. It's an important assignment, so I wanted students to take it seriously and reflect that in the weight that I assign in the grade book.
Okay. And not professors looking for an explanation of the participation grade. It's kind of a short question, but I believe that's what we're going for here. So Erika, I believe that's for you as well.
Yes, for participation, I have two primary ways that I track it using iClicker. So part of that will be every 15 minutes or so in the regular lecture, I will have a lower level Bloom's taxonomy question just as a knowledge check. And I am able to give them a certain percentage for correctness and a certain percentage for participation. So I don't want them to lose too many points when they get it wrong, because we're in the middle of learning. But I also want them to take it seriously and not just submit an answer. So I put a little bit of weight on was it correct and a little bit on have you at least tried. And then I also use those real world small group participation activities toward the end of the class and the peer instruction. So the peer instruction, I use iClicker to track that as well. And the small group activities, I'll just have them take out a piece of paper as a group and write out their answers to the set of questions. And then I collect those. And I just score them for completion and not for correctness.
So I think a lot of instructors would like to assign writing at the intro level in principles and a lot of intro level courses, right? How do you get through grading all of that? I'm kind of curious. How does that happen? I think that's the main blocker for a lot of folks in terms of assigning a substantive writing piece.
For me, in the large class, I mean, I have 700 students in my section alone, and I also coordinate the grading across the smaller sections that are on our branch campuses. So it amounts to about 1,000 students a term, which I definitely can't grade all of those myself. Instead, I have a team of graders, try to keep it about 45 to 1, and I supervise them. And we use a third-party grading service called NetTutor, and I work with the grading supervisor closely to make sure that the guidelines are clear and that the grading comes back at a level that I think is sufficient and appropriate for the course, as well as the feedback. So they're giving unique feedback as well. And then my in-house TAs do a quick random check through the graders' feedback and so forth, and then we will release them to the students. When I teach at a smaller college at Santa Barbara City College, I have less than 20 students in my honors class, and I'll do that same process myself.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
in my situation, yeah, I don't assign term papers in my large class. The writing assignments are mostly on the discussion boards. But as Erika said, for the smaller classes, I work with students throughout the semester on their papers, so that once I see the final version, it's more or less just it's revisions of drafts I've seen before. So it becomes a fairly easy process to grade them. So, but yes, yeah, I definitely enjoy having students practice their economic knowledge by applying it to a topic, and I think that's really important.
Thank
And
you.
let me add the grading service that TA, it's through also Macmillan, so they work together to provide that service and help me get through all those papers.
Thank you, Erika. I think this for either or both of you, perhaps. Are you required to submit student outcome assessment, in quotes, reports? Are there differences in what's required between the 2 and the 4-year institutions?
For us in at FAU, I mean, we do have common final exam questions, for example, that every instructor, regardless of the section, has to provide. So we provide results on those common questions, which are then provided in the assessment reports. So there are at the department level, there are, various requirements that we are required to do. But not so much at the, at least in my experience at the community college level, I haven't had to have the same level of reporting. So Erika might have had a different experience on that.
Yes, at the community college level, we have to report students' proficiency on meeting the learning objectives for the course. So that's across all the courses, they have to submit that. And I basically tie it to their performance on the exams that are related to that particular learning objective. And then at the university level, we have to do a common assessment at the end of the semester, where all of the students will take the exact same 10-question multiple choice quiz. And then also the writing assignment, we do an assessment of their writing and communication proficiency.
Thank you. My colleague mentioned to me, and I think this is a good idea, and Eric, I know you worked on these and assigned them, the pre-lecture tutorial content with the bridge questions. Do you assign the bridge questions, and is that to you sort of like a low stakes writing assignment in a way? Could you speak to that?
I don't assign the bridge questions. I do assign the tutorials for students to watch, but I don't assign the bridge questions because I have the writing assignments and discussion boards as well.
For me, it depends on the course. When I teach, for example, my honors class, which I tend to flip the class more in an honors class than in a non-honors class. So in that case, in my honors class, I would have the students complete the pre-class tutorial and answer the bridge questions so that I can use those responses within the actual class time, where the actual class is less lecture-based and more discussion-based. So I feel like those bridge questions do have an important value if you want your students to complete some a little bit like completing a very short assignment. The bridge questions are maybe just 1 or 2 questions. Complete those before class. So have students work maybe 15-20 minutes before each lecture, so they're coming to class better prepared. So I feel like there is a very important role for the bridge questions, but it may not be what you would use in every type of class.
And what I've been doing in the background here is quickly showing people who are not aware what this is. The pre-lecture tutorials are a series of short, this one's particularly short because it's the very first one, a series of short, like 1 to 3 minute clips, back to back, followed by questions which you can assign. This system was built on an NSF grant, and it took into account a lot of different learning theory as to, they actually used eye tracking software, things like that, in the designing of this. And Eric has been instrumental in bringing this to economics. So these are assignable along with these answers, but the bridge questions, which they're optional, but the people that use them really do like them, are something that you can assign after assigning this video, and ask the students to ask students questions about the material they just watched videos on, and ask them to answer questions, but also to give the reason why they answered the question, to actually get the student writing and get some insight into why they answered what they answered. So I think I actually have to go to student preview. So the students are asked questions and then asked, okay, so that's your answer. Why is that? What was your thinking? So it's an interesting way, I think, to introduce writing to a course, but also to maybe get at some misconceptions as to what the students may be having. So I'll stop sharing now. I think we may be at the end of our questions. I do not see any more. I see something in chat, but I think that was just a reminder. Yes, it was. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Eric and Erika. Invaluable as always. This is it for EconEd Virtual for a little bit. We will obviously continue to have these sessions, and look forward to EconEd Live in 2024. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Well, thank you. Have a great day.